Okay, so on the spiritual path, there are these two roles we all have to master if we really want to get closer to God. There's the teacher, and then there's the student. In this explainer, we're going to unpack how balancing these two keys, knowing when to guide and when to learn, is pretty much the essence of the entire journey. So, what are these keys? Well, according to our source material, the whole spiritual journey really boils down to just two things. And these aren't some lofty, abstract ideas. They're two very real mindsets that shape our relationship with knowledge, our faith, and, yeah, ultimately with God. So here they are, the muallim, which means the teacher, and the muta'allim, the student. But what's so important to get is that these aren't titles for a special few. Nope. They're two states of being that every single one of us has to learn to move between on our own path. And here's the real kicker. You're not one or the other. You are both all the time. You're a teacher of what you already get, and you have to stay a humble student of everything you don't. The whole secret to moving forward is found right there, in the balance between the two. All right, so let's start with the role most of us know best, the student, the one who's seeking. This path is, of course, full of amazing virtues. But as we're about to see, it's also got some very familiar traps that we all tend to fall into. Yeah, does this list look familiar? I mean, we've all been there, right? We find a million little reasons to skip that class or put off that practice. The weather's bad, you've got a headache. These days, the list of excuses to just stay comfy is literally endless. Now hold those small, everyday excuses in your mind for a second, and let's compare them to the journey of Salman al-Farsi. This man left his home, his family, crossed entire countries, and was even sold into slavery, all in this relentless, years-long search for the truth. See the difference? That's not just a casual interest. It's a life's mission. But a true student needs more than just sheer grit. They need focus. You know, the companion Abu Darda famously prayed against a scattered heart, which is such a perfect description, right? It's that feeling of your mind wanting a little bit of everything, but never really mastering anything. A focused heart, one that isn't being pulled in 100 different directions, is the one that actually finds that closeness to God. Okay, so now let's flip the coin and talk about the other side, the path of the teacher. Because as we learn things, we also get the responsibility to share them. But how do you know what a true guide looks like? Well, our source material gives us a super clear way to tell the difference between real guidance and, well, a cheap imitation. What's so amazing about this is just how clearly it lays everything out. I mean, look at the difference. A true guide wants to unite people, they lead with love, they're humble, and they build others up. A pretender? It's all about their ego, creating division, being arrogant, and tearing other people down. This is such a powerful checklist for anyone who's looking for a teacher. But being a true student is about more than just focus. It's about your inner character. And there's this incredible story that shows this perfectly. It's about a young student named Abdurrahman Effendi, who one night came across a noble woman who was lost in a terrible winter storm. So he finds her, totally lost, and he offers her shelter in his tiny, single room. Just picture the scene. Two strangers, one small room, and a long, cold night ahead. This was a massive test of his character. Now, as the student was studying through the night, the woman started to notice something really strange. He kept holding his finger right over the flame of his candle, only pulling it away when the pain got to be too much. So when she finally asked him what in the world he was doing, he explained that whenever a tempting thought popped into his head, he used the physical pain from the flame to remind his soul of the consequences of sin. It was a physical reminder of his deep, internal, spiritual discipline. In that story about the student and his discipline, it brings us right to the absolute core of this whole topic. Knowledge is totally meaningless unless it's turned into action. Our source has a name for this: the idol of knowledge. This is what happens when we start collecting information not to change ourselves, but to win arguments, or to sound smart, or just to feed our ego. That kind of knowledge, it actually becomes a wall between us and God. This idea was perfectly lived out by Salim, who was one of the top scholars of the Quran. During a huge critical battle, people told him to stay back, saying he was too valuable as a teacher. But he refused. He said, "Today is not the day to protect the Quran's words, but to protect its rights and honor." He knew there's a time for studying and there's a time for action.
Abu Darda puts it even more bluntly. He says the person who doesn't know and doesn't act is accountable once, but the person who knows better and still doesn't act, they're accountable 7 times over. See, knowledge isn't just a gift, it's a huge responsibility. Okay, so with all these potential traps of ego and inaction, how do we actually build a spiritual journey that works? Well, it starts by building an unshakable foundation, one solid step at a time. Here's the practical roadmap. First, you build your creed, your core beliefs, the Aqaid, and you learn it from a solid source. Second, you learn your practice, the fiqh, understanding worship and your daily duties. And third, and this is the most important part, you just live it. You turn all that information into amal, into real, sincere action. And the thing is, you're not meant to do this journey alone. It's held together by these 2 amazing pillars of spiritual friendship. The first is vefa, or loyalty, which means honoring everyone and everything that helped you grow, even a tree that once gave you shade. The second is sadaqat, or faithfulness, staying true to the path and to the people on it with you, especially when things get hard. And all of this, the learning, the acting, the loyalty, it all points to the ultimate purpose of this whole path. We don't learn just to stuff our heads with facts. The whole point of every book we read, every lesson we hear, is to increase our awe, that sense of wonder and humility before God.
And that leaves us with one final question to really think about. It's not how much do you know? In our age of endless information, we have more data than ever. The real question, the one we all have to ask ourselves, is this: with all this information, is my awe of God actually growing?